stampede started. It doesn't have a lot to do with us here in Banff, except for so many tourists come in. Just to show you, this is the story of the Bow River. Obviously, the west of Canada right there, you could drop Western Europe into that easily. To put sort of some perspective, the province of Alberta, where we are now, my home, is twice the size of Germany, right? There was a map they used to have at the museum in Victoria, the capital of British Columbia, is way out on Vancouver Island here, and it was showing how many countries around the world you could fit in. And when they were going through Asia, so they put in Bangladesh and Nepal and Bhutan, something like where British Columbia is about 5 million people, 5.5, and you can fit in a different part. Hola Maria, you could fit from other parts of the world in that equivalent territory, something like 250 million people. So this is a vast area, but right up here in Banff National Park, the headwaters of the Bow River is 85 kilometers from here up at Bow Glacier and Bow Lake, and that is flowing out. It's meeting the Old Man River, the Red Deer River. It then meets the North Saskatchewan, and all the way out to the Hudson's Bay. So that gives you some perspective. If you count every bend in this river, it's going to travel 4,000 kilometers, about 4,200 kilometers actually, out to the coast. And people always talk about fishing. And of course, Canada, west of Canada, is famous for salmon, but you will not find a salmon in this river because it's on the Atlantic slope, not the Pacific slope. And so this just gives you a little bit of a sense of the larger fish you'll find in here. And then, of course, all the different, Jim, it's mighty, yet it's just a tributary of the Saskatchewan. North America is by far the wettest continent in terms of major river systems. Obviously, the largest one is the Mississippi, and then the St. Lawrence. Um, sorry. And then, of course, the Columbia River out in the west, that's the largest discharge into the Pacific. Then the Fraser is the largest river solely in British Columbia, and they call it the Greatest Salmon River. And then further north is the Skeena system, and then the Tatashine, and then up to the Yukon River, which goes out to the Bering Sea, and then the Mackenzie River. And you only have to drive up to Jasper, and the water that's flowing north through Jasper is making its way to the Mackenzie system and up to the Arctic. So we are the hydraulic center of this continent. Um, no, Ruth, that's an interesting question. It doesn't go through a lot of lakes. So if you ever get to see the Fraser, if you join me next time I'm in Hope, and I will be putting up a tour next week in the town of Hope in British Columbia, I always show you the mighty Fraser, and it will be huge at that point. That makes this look like a little creek. um, and really, truly, I'm not exaggerating that. That's the biggest, muddiest one because it doesn't pass through any lakes at all. Whereas here, this river is used a lot for irrigation out through the prairies, Alberta, Saskatchewan, not so much Manitoba because it comes in further north, and that filters it out. Now, really, it's so milky at the moment because this is direct glacier melt that's going on here, and direct glacial melt. Then it will start to settle as the river begins to drop when the snow melt has dropped off, and then it'll be fed with no more snow and only glaciers, and then it'll be a much more distinct turquoise. But I love this stand of these aspen trees down here. You notice this one has actually adapted itself because it's good fresh water. This tree is only in water for about, this is a bit longer this year, but usually about, you're welcome, about 3 weeks. And so it's standing up in such a unique little formation there. And also, just whilst I'm here, I know these views are so lovely. The light keeps shifting. So you look back up the Bow Falls in the distance there. But then suddenly you'll see here a few different types of rocks around. Now, when you see them very rounded, you know they're river rocks. You know that they've just been rolled over and carved down. And if you see those kind of rounded rocks sitting on the side of a mountain, then you know at some point water flowed through there. But you see one very smooth rock on the right here and one very rough looking rock on the left. Well, that's because the one on the left actually has coral reef in it. So we have coral reef all through this land. The Rockies themselves were a shallow inland sea about 500, 600 million years ago. So that's a long time. So I'm laughing to myself, but I saw a joke the other day where someone said it was an argument between, I guess, uh, people with different philosophic views of life, and and I guess one person was sort of a very evangelical Christian and said, well, if the asteroid wiped out the dinosaurs, why didn't it wipe out the people? And it said, social distancing, dude, 65 million years. I just, sorry, I got myself laughing about that. But I, but I always love to come look at the light here. This is so perfect. But but when I come up here, I'm coming up by the Spray River. But this now it's so bright at the moment that I'll have to get back in the shadow. But when I come back to this idea of this coral reef, it's a bit harder. And so you have this dolomite limestone, which is lower down, and a softer conglomerate um, limestone that's higher up that erodes much faster. But then you reveal this old hard reef formations. Joyce, cost of living here is extremely high. Um, yeah, we go to places like London and New York because it's cheap. Now, the cost of living has gone way, way, way up here. It's on the news all the time, just how expensive housing and everything is in Canada. Banff is very, very expensive. Um, Go ahead. What's today's Saturday? Hola, Vanessa. Hace rato, un gusto verte. Maybe have a look. Maybe have a look at what it would cost to stay at the Banff Springs tonight. But now, as I've just moved to this section into the shadow here, this is the Spray River. It's coming down through the Spray Valley, which is Kananaskis country. You will notice when you look into this gorgeous little river here that it is see through. This water you can make it down to the bottom, and that's because there's no glacial water down here. Yeah, they raft down here. They do two types of tours. One that just goes down about 45 minutes. This is a golf course back here. We wouldn't build a golf course in a national park now, but it was 1926. Or you can raft all the way down to the town of Canmore, and I love to do tours down in Canmore. But I just love this formation because you get two colors, and this isn't really the two colors today, but it's just the light hitting the bow, and I'm over in a shadow. So it was 5 degrees Celsius in my backyard. That's right, Joanne. There's a little bit of latent rock flour, which is the ground up glaciers, but there's no glaciation anymore in Kananaskis country because that's the very front ranges of the Rockies. But that light is just perfect. And now, just by having walked all of 50 meters, I can show you Mount Norquay up in the distance. Now, many of you will remember that all covered in snow. Well, those are what the ski runs look like